You think Greek mythology is a test of character. You think Hercules and Achilles won their battles because they were brave, or strong, or virtuous. You are wrong. In the ancient world, victory wasn't about heroism. It was about technology. It was about who held the keys to the terrifying, supernatural artifacts that could rewrite the laws of physics. Just like today, where a single drone can decide the fate of a nation, the Olympians understood one simple rule: he who has the hardware rules the world. We aren't talking about magic wands. We are talking about weapons of mass destruction. These items didn't just cut skin. They unleashed plagues that wiped out civilizations. They controlled the weather systems of the entire planet. They granted speed faster than the speed of sound. These were assets so valuable, gods would kill their own children just to hold them for a second. But there is a catch. In Greek mythology, power is never free. For every ounce of supernatural advantage these artifacts gave, they took something back: a sanity, a soul, or a life. Today, we are opening the classified vault. We are auditing the 6 most broken artifacts in history. From the shield that drove men mad, to the box that ended paradise. Welcome to the inventory of the gods. Our first case study begins with a massive security failure. The greatest warrior in history, Achilles, has effectively gone AWOL. He refuses to fight, but his cousin Patroclus makes a fatal calculation. Patroclus borrows Achilles' armor to lead the Myrmidons. It works until it doesn't. The Trojan prince Hector, backed by the god Apollo, kills Patroclus and strips the armor from his corpse. Achilles has lost his best friend, and he has lost his protection. Achilles is now a weapon without a casing. He burns with a need for revenge, but entering the battlefield naked is suicide. He needs an upgrade, and he doesn't go to a blacksmith. He goes to the military-industrial complex of Olympus. His mother Thetis calls in a favor with Hephaestus, the smith god. What Hephaestus delivers isn't just armor. It is a psychological warfare device. Homer describes the result as brighter than blazing fire. But the centerpiece was the shield. This wasn't just bronze. It was a moving, living map of the cosmos. Hephaestus forged the earth, the sky, and the sea into the metal. He carved 2 cities, one of peace, one of war. When an enemy looked at this shield, they weren't seeing a defense mechanism. They were seeing the eyes of a god staring back at them. It was designed to induce terror. When Achilles returned to the field, the tide didn't just turn, it evaporated. The sight of the armor alone caused panic. He slaughtered his way to Hector, impervious to the blows that would have killed a lesser man. But this brings us to the tragedy of the artifact. The armor was impenetrable. It was perfect. But the man inside was not. The armor protected his chest, his head, and his heart, but it could not protect him from fate. A single arrow to the heel, his only unarmored point, bypassed the divine engineering entirely. The ultimate defense, defeated by a cheap shot. If Achilles' armor was personal protection, our next artifact is a weapon of mass destruction, the Trident of Poseidon. To the uneducated, it looks like an oversized fishing fork, but in tactical terms, it is a tectonic disruptor. Forged by the Cyclopes, the same heavy industry engineers who built Zeus's lightning, this wasn't designed for dueling. It was designed to terraform. It amplifies Poseidon's will, allowing him to bypass physical laws to manipulate the Earth's crust. The most famous deployment of this asset was the battle for Attica. This wasn't a war of soldiers, it was a bidding war. Poseidon and Athena were competing for ownership of a strategic city. Poseidon went for a display of raw power. He struck the rock of the Acropolis. The Trident split the stone and unleashed a spring of water. Impressive, yes. Practical, no. The water was salty, useless for drinking. Athena countered with an olive tree, food, oil, and wood. The people chose the tree. Poseidon lost the contract. But here is why you don't anger a god with a geophysical weapon. Poseidon didn't take the rejection well. He initiated a scorched earth policy. He struck the ground a second time. This time he didn't give water, he took it away. He dried up the rivers and scorched the land. It was a brutal reminder: the Trident gives and the Trident takes. Yet the Trident had one final, bizarre capability: bioengineering. In a separate operation, Poseidon struck the Earth to create an entirely new species. He created the first horse. He effectively invented the tank of the ancient world. From earthquakes to cavalry, the Trident wasn't just a symbol of the sea. It was the engine that drove the Greek war machine. If the Trident was a weapon of force, our next artifact is a weapon of deceit. This is the story of the first Trojan horse in history, and it wasn't a wooden horse. It was a woman. The context is crucial. Prometheus had just stolen fire technology from the gods and given it to humans. Zeus didn't want a war, he wanted a punishment that would last forever. So he ordered Hephaestus to manufacture a gift. He created Pandora, but the weapon wasn't her. It was the package she carried. History calls it Pandora's box, but that's a mistranslation. It was actually a pithos, a large storage jar. Think of it less like a jewelry box and more like a biohazard canister. The trap was rigged. The gods engineered Pandora with a specific flaw: insatiable curiosity. They gave her the jar, told her never to open it, and sent her to live among humans. They knew exactly what would happen. It wasn't a mistake, it was a countdown. When the lid came off, it didn't release magic sparkles. It released a biological and psychological plague: sickness, death, hardship. Before this moment, humanity lived in a golden age without disease. In 1 second, the jar infected the entire human race. Pandora slammed the lid shut, but the damage was done. The containment unit was empty, except for one last anomaly trapped at the bottom: hope. The Greeks called it Elpis. Historians still debate why hope was in a jar full of evils. Was it a mercy from Zeus? Or was it the cruelest evil of all, the thing that keeps humans suffering, thinking it will get better? That is the true horror of the box. If the armor of Achilles was the pinnacle of engineering, our next artifact proves that nature is the ultimate manufacturer. We are looking at the pelt of the Nemean Lion. This was not a fashion statement. It was a biologically grown tank. When Heracles took the contract to kill this beast, he walked in with standard munitions, arrows and spears. He fired point blank. The arrows didn't just miss, they shattered. The lion's fur was golden, impervious to bronze, iron, or steel. It was a walking fortress. Heracles realized quickly, you cannot shoot a tank, you have to dismantle it. He trapped the beast in a cave and engaged in close quarters battle. Since he couldn't pierce the skin, he bypassed the armor entirely. He stunned it with a club, then wrapped his arms around its throat. No blood was spilled. He simply squeezed until the monster stopped moving. The armor held, but the creature inside did not. But the mission wasn't just to kill, it was to retrieve the asset. Heracles tried to skin the lion, but his knife snapped. The very fur he needed was preventing him from taking it. It was a paradox, until Athena suggested the solution: use the lion's own claws. They were the only material in existence sharp enough to slice the hide. Heracles skinned the beast with its own weapon. When Heracles returned wearing the pelt, he was now effectively invincible. Arrows, swords, spears, nothing could touch him. The sight was so terrifying that King Eurystheus hid in a jar and banned Heracles from entering the city again. Heracles had become a walking weapon. In every conflict, there is one variable that matters more than armor or strength: speed. If you can be everywhere at once, you control the board. Enter the Teleria, the winged sandals of Hermes, another Hephaestus original. Crafted from imperishable gold, these weren't just shoes, they were a propulsion system. They granted the wearer flight, but more importantly, they granted velocity. They allowed Hermes to break the barrier between the mortal world, Olympus, and the underworld. Hermes wasn't just a messenger boy. He was the fiber optic network of the ancient world. Without him, the command chain collapses. He moved intel between Zeus and his armies faster than a heartbeat. But the most dangerous deployment of this asset wasn't for delivery. It was for assassination. The sandals were loaned to the hero Perseus for a Black Ops mission: the neutralization of Medusa. Medusa was a ground-based threat. If you walked up to her, you turned to stone. Perseus used the sandals to gain air superiority. He hovered above her, out of her line of sight, and used the reflection in his shield to guide the strike. He didn't just kill her, he escaped. Medusa's sisters chased him, but they were bound by gravity. Perseus wasn't. The Sandals turned an impossible fight into a hit and run. Finally, we arrive at the asset that launched the first international naval operation in history, the Golden Fleece. This wasn't a weapon of war, it was a weapon of legitimacy. It was a kingmaker. If you held the fleece, your right to rule was absolute. Jason needed the fleece to claim the throne of Iolcus, but the asset was stored in Colchis, modern-day Georgia, the absolute edge of the Greek map. To get it, he assembled the Argonauts, a special forces team that included Hercules, Orpheus, and the fathers of Trojan War heroes. Arriving at Colchis was the easy part. The problem was the security system. The fleece was guarded by the Draken Kalkalikos, a dragon that was biologically incapable of sleep. Jason couldn't fight this thing. A head-on assault would fail, so he used an insider threat. Medea, the daughter of the king of Colchis, betrayed her father. She was a master of pharmakeia, potions, and sorcery. She didn't kill the dragon, she drugged it. She hacked the security system. Jason grabbed the asset and fled. This wasn't a noble victory. It was a smash-and grab. He returned to Iolcus, claimed his throne, and established himself as a legend. But like every artifact on this list, the cost was high. From the shield that terrified armies to the box that poisoned the world, these artifacts remind us of one brutal truth about Greek mythology. Power is not given, it is taken. And it is usually taken by those willing to pay the price in blood, betrayal, and sanity. The gods didn't make these items to help humanity. They made them to control us. And looking at the chaos they caused, it worked. If you could steal one of these artifacts for yourself, which one would it be? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see what happens when a god actually loses a war, click this video right here. I'll see you there.